There was an occasion where things didn't go according to plan and we took a detour and a gun was produced and I was threatened and told that I was suspected of being an undercover detective. I chose to say, of course I am. That's exactly who I am. Yeah, exactly, you're absolutely right. That's you fucked. There was a kind of pause, there was a kind of moment in the car where you think it will go either way, and then there was laughter, and then we went and had a drink. And I remember having a drink and I went off to Lou and I vomited for about 3 or 4 minutes.
As an undercover officer, the important thing before deployment is to build up your legend, your identity. Creating a character, a profile that will stand some scrutiny. So it would depend on what you were being deployed to do. So if you were about to buy the drugs, you'd have to be very convincing as a drug buyer. If you were buying firearms, you'd have to be comfortable breaking down weapons and look believable that you understood exactly what type of firearms you were buying.
You are creating a fictitious character, so there's always a danger of discovery. You are constantly in fear of being exposed, of being seen as not who you say you are. As an undercover officer, one of the things you would do religiously was to try clean yourself. And by that I would mean take every precaution you could to make sure that you weren't being followed. And this was a place that I used, particularly if I wanted to abandon a vehicle that I might be using and to really dry clean myself and make sure that I hadn't been compromised. In that life, within that role, I worked on many cases and in a wide variety of guises. Some of these may only involve a few days' work, a few hours, a telephone call. Sometimes it might mean long-term deployment. In one case, about 2.5 years. So somewhere like this on a ferry would be a good opportunity to actually meet with your cover man. Cover men were often referred to as your uncle. Sometimes you could become so involved in a job that you might not see clearly, that you might not make the right decision. But hopefully your cover man, your uncle, could see that it might just be a step too far, that the risk might be too great, that you had been in situ for too long, that you were not seeing clearly anymore. And maybe it was time to take a step back. If it was a drugs operation, it's about keeping a clear head and never using. I think for any undercover officer, that's the path to take. But here's the simple truth. If somebody put a gun to your head or in your mouth and said, I tell you what, you and I are going to have this line now, and if we do that, then I'm sure we're going to get on very well. And I'm not going to have any questions, about you being who you are. If you're placed in that situation, what do you do? Because the law would say, well, of course we don't encourage undercover officers to take drugs. But no management would have taken a view that you should have just flatly refused. And sort of becoming addicted or having a dependency, on drugs. You can understand how that could easily happen. I can remember an officer who's something of a mentor in terms of undercover policing told me if I could at all avoid working on either a paedophile case or a corruption case, to avoid it because of the damage it was likely to do to you. And I didn't listen.
In terms of working on a paedophile case, the story as I understood it was that I was kind of a similar kind of persuasion, and there was supposed to be a level of understanding that we both knew what each other's sort of proclivities were. It was surreal, extremely difficult, knowing what crimes this individual had committed. I wasn't a father then, I am now, but even then it was very difficult to be in the company of this man, you know. And there were moments, again, looking back, where I think he was testing, you know. 2 hours, you know. Still remember that case now, you know. This world can eventually fuck you up.
One of the last cases I worked on was police corruption. I was called to the Yard, Scotland Yard, to a meeting with the man who ran the undercover unit at that time. And I was asked to infiltrate a group of senior officers suspected of corruption. During that long, difficult infiltration, I was subject to allegations, and that proved to be groundless, and the allegations were withdrawn, but that had severely compromised the corruption inquiry. It was very difficult to know what was happening because nobody from the Met contacted me to debrief me. There was good reason to believe that the reason I'd been suspended was a softening up process to coerce me into spying on other suspended officers. So it was a very complicated double bluff. That corruption inquiry, there was clearly substance to it, and it probably started from a good place, but it itself became corrupted. And that was the first job where I felt really kind of isolated and not connected to the organisation. It really was a poison chalice. I certainly suffered a mental sort of deterioration during that time. You could see there were elements of God's work within the management. God's work is the manipulation of facts, truth, to fit the agenda. And so if pressure is put on senior managers to do the right thing on behalf of the organisation, they will do that. I thought back then that undercover policing, it was a pure form of policing. It would not be subject to whatever agenda was being discussed in the high office within Scotland Yard. Coming to a place like this, to a football stadium, here you were in the company of thousands, anonymous. And you could relax. This was somewhere that I wanted to come and just be myself and to lose myself in the crowd.
If I was pressed, was it worth all the pain and the suffering? You know, I spent time at a psychiatric unit twice. How I reconciled it, that at every point, at every junction, had I not stopped and turned left or right, navigated my way through it, I would not be the person I am today. I can see a positive in it. I understand who I am and what I do now. So it's a good, you know, I mean, it's a good thing. It's a kind of, you know, you look back